So that's the latest from Europe. Let's take a closer look at all of these developments. We're joined in the studio now by Professor Stephen Haseler, Director of the Global Policy Institute. Professor Haseler, thank you very much for joining us. Now, let's start with France. We just heard the words of the finance minister. We haven't seen many mass resignations, have we, in all these weeks of turmoil? Why do you think these three executives stepped down now?
Well, I think there's a growing understanding of how serious this crisis is, and you've had huge amounts of money being lost, you've had irresponsible behaviour, and I think because of the severity of the crisis and the fact that we now know it's going to affect the real economy in a very serious way, ordinary people's incomes and jobs are going to be affected, that the banks and the finance institutions that have basically got us into this crisis need to accept responsibility for it. So I'm very glad this has happened, and I hope it's the beginning of not only other resignations, but I hope it's the beginning also of an investigation. The American system tends to investigate rather well, actually. Senate banking committees had before them some of these heads and CEOs of finance institutions, and I think we need to do that in Europe. We don't investigate as sharply as we should, and I think we now need to begin to, as well as to make people realize people should take responsibility for their actions.
Well, in the meantime, what we are seeing is these bailout deals. Another one, ING shares now soaring because of $13.4 billion, an extraordinary amount of money. But certainly these governments are soon going to run out of money and not be able to organize these bailouts.
Yes, well, this is one of the major problems. That we've had governments in the Western world, America and Europe and others, bailing out their banks. The Dutch one is the latest. But of course this has implications for government funding. I mean, money doesn't come out of hot air for the governments. They can either, when they bail out these institutions, they either have to raise it by borrowing, could be increasingly difficult, or by raising taxes. Which brings us right back to the domestic taxpayer of the Western world.
Although Spain, perhaps, is looking at another avenue. They're appealing to Arab sovereign wealth funds to buy this public debt. Do you think that's a solution? Who wins and who loses in that?
This is a very tricky one. There are many people in the West who thought when this crisis struck us that the sovereign wealth funds from around the world, which are Arab, Chinese, others, would come to the Western banking system's rescue. And I'm not so sure about that for two reasons. First, there are some Western countries, Germany and France, for instance, who are very worried about accepting these sovereign wealth because of the political implications. But the sovereign wealth holders themselves, the Arab sovereign wealth holders themselves, might be a little wary of investing in the West. It's a two-way street here because the bank shares are continuing to fall and so on and so forth. So I'm not so sure that sovereign wealth funds are the way to bail out the West. I think the West has got to take responsibility and bail out itself, in my view.
Dr. Stephen Haseler from the Global Policy Institute, thank you very much for speaking to us.